There's a room you've been sitting in for years, maybe your whole life. And the strange thing is, you didn't know it was a room. You thought it was the world. The walls were made of conversations that went nowhere, friendships that felt like performances, connections that required you to be smaller, quieter, more agreeable, and you played along. Because that's what you do when you don't know there's a door. But something happened. You don't even know when. Maybe it was gradual, maybe it was sudden, but one day you saw the door. And the moment you walked through it, you thought you were leaving people behind. You were only leaving the smaller version of yourself. This is about what happens when you stop pretending, when you stop performing, when you realize that the connection you've been chasing was never real to begin with. This is about why the awakened man always walks alone. You know the exact moment it started. Not the day, not the time, but the feeling, that subtle shift inside you when the conversations you used to have started feeling hollow. The people you used to laugh with started feeling distant. Not because they changed, because you did. You stopped chasing what they were still chasing: status, validation, the need to belong. And the moment you stopped, the distance created itself. I remember the first time I noticed it on set years ago. I realized I was doing scenes for applause, not truth. It doesn't come with a manual. It doesn't announce itself. You don't get a ceremony or a moment of clarity. You just start noticing things. The performance in everyday interaction, how much energy people spend keeping up appearances, the constant need for validation, for agreement, for reassurance. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You notice how people speak just to avoid silence, how relationships survive not because of honesty, but because everyone agrees to keep the story going. You understand why people hold on to what feels familiar, even when it's killing them slowly. You still care, you still listen, but you no longer play along. And that shift, subtle as it is, creates distance all on its own. From the outside, you might seem the same. You still show up, you're still polite, you haven't disappeared completely, but something fundamental has shifted. The people around you can feel it. Even if they can't name it, they sense that you're no longer trying to impress anyone, that you're not looking for approval, that you're not playing the social game anymore. Some find it admirable, others find it unsettling, because you're no longer easy to read. You're not performing for anyone. You don't flatter, don't compete, don't entertain, and that makes you hard to place. People might say you've changed, that you're distant now, too quiet, and that misunderstanding sometimes hurts quietly. What they really mean is you no longer fit into the roles they've grown used to. They liked you better when you reflected their values. Now you reflect something else, something still, something grounded, something not dependent on being liked. In the beginning, solitude feels strange, almost uncomfortable, because you've been running from it your whole life, filling every moment with noise, with people, with distractions, anything to avoid being alone with yourself. But then something shifts. You stop running. You sit in the silence, and you discover it isn't empty at all. Most people will never understand this. They equate being alone with loneliness. They think if you're not surrounded by people, something must be missing. But what if they have it backwards? What if most of what fills a typical day is just noise, pretending to be important? In solitude, you see yourself clearly like a face in still water. There's no one to impress, no image to maintain, no pressure to be anything other than what you are. And that clarity, while uncomfortable at first, becomes a source of strength you didn't know existed. You've learned something most people never learn: how to sit with yourself without needing the silence to end, without needing someone to fill the space, without needing validation to know you're okay. The world told you that being alone means something's wrong, that you need more friends, more connection, more validation. But what if that's the lie they sell you to keep you dependent? What if the deepest truth lives in the space you've been avoiding? You don't avoid people now, but you no longer depend on them to feel complete. You don't hate connection, but you refuse to pretend for the sake of it. And that shift, that fundamental shift in how you exist, changes everything. The silence you once feared has become the peace you protect. Let me tell you something about how most relationships work. They're built on contracts nobody talks about, unspoken agreements. You nod to my story, I nod to yours. We won't go too deep. We won't challenge each other. We'll keep each other comfortable. That's the deal. And it works until someone stops playing along. When you stop seeking validation, when you stop needing reassurance, when you stop participating in the mutual exchange of comfort, the contract breaks. Not because you rejected anyone, but because you're no longer feeding the system. People notice this, even if they don't understand it. They sense that something familiar is missing. The constant back and forth, the emotional dependency, the shared performance. And without you playing your part, the whole dynamic weakens. Conversations become strained, invitations slow down. Not from conflict, from distance. Because the foundation you stood on was never solid to begin with. Listen, this is the hard part. True friendship is rare, profoundly rare. Most connections are built on convenience, on shared complaints, on mutual validation, on the silent agreement to avoid anything too real. But true friendship, real connection, it's different. It's not based on need, not based on validation, not based on shared illusions. It's based on mutual recognition. Two people who don't need each other, but choose to walk alongside one another anyway, without expectation, without performance, without pretense. These connections can't be forced. They emerge naturally, if at all, and only when both people have stopped seeking to be completed by the other. Most people never reach this place. They stay in the contract, in the performance, in the endless cycle of seeking validation and never finding real peace. Here's what makes you unsettling to others now. You've stopped playing by the rules. The social rules nobody talks about, the ones that keep everyone comfortable. You no longer give comfort just to ease tension. You don't pretend to agree when you don't. You've stopped doing the little acts that keep everyone else feeling safe, but keep you feeling false. This isn't rebellion. It's not arrogance. It's clarity. And clarity is deeply disruptive because it exposes something most people spend their lives avoiding. How much of everyday life is based on mutual avoidance of truth? People speak to fill silence. They agree to avoid conflict. They perform to maintain image. They play roles they've never questioned. And you've stopped participating, not because you don't care, but because you care too much about what's real. When you stop reinforcing the illusions, people feel exposed. They feel like you're judging them, even when you're not. Your presence alone reminds them of the performance they're still giving. And instead of looking inward, they distance themselves from you. Not because they dislike you, but because they don't know how to relate to someone who's no longer playing the game. You see the false certainty in their eyes, the roles they perform, the beliefs they've never questioned, the constant movement that masks the inner stillness they haven't touched. And you can't pretend you don't see it. I tried that too. And each time, the truth tugged me back to be the person they were comfortable with. But you can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you know. And you won't trade truth for the comfort of belonging to something false. As you become clearer, something unexpected happens. You need less praise, less noise, fewer apologies you weren't owed. You stop seeking recognition. You stop needing others to confirm what you already know internally. And as that need dissolves, so do many of the relationships that required it. This is the paradox nobody warned you about. The clearer you become, the quieter your life becomes. Not because you're closed off, but because so much of what used to fill your time was rooted in searching for external affirmation. Without that search, most social activity feels optional, if not unnecessary. You stop trying to be understood. You stop needing to explain yourself. You stop measuring your worth by how much space you take up in other people's lives. From the outside, this looks like withdrawal, like isolation, like something's wrong. But inside, it's the opposite. It's a settling in to something solid, something real, something that doesn't change based on who's watching. You still value connection, but only when it emerges naturally, without demand, without performance, without the exhausting need to maintain an image. You haven't become cold. You've simply become free. Free from the need to be completed by someone else, free from the weight of constant performance, free from the exhaustion of pretending. And in that freedom, there's a depth you never found in attachment, a peace you never found in belonging, a strength you never found in validation. Once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. You look inward, the noise quiets. You look outward, the world is still dreaming. You see the performance everywhere now, in people's eyes, in their voices, in the way they move through life, without ever questioning why. You see the roles they're playing, the beliefs they've inherited, the fears they're avoiding, the constant movement that masks the inner stillness they haven't touched. And you no longer envy what others call connection because you understand the cost. It demands agreement, performance, conformity. And you won't trade truth for the comfort of fitting in. Still part of you quietly hopes for another awake soul. Not for crowds, not for shallow company, but for someone awake, someone who has seen what you've seen, felt what you've felt, someone who doesn't need you to be smaller, quieter, more agreeable in order to feel safe around you. That kind of meeting is rare, profoundly rare. Can't be forced, can't be manufactured, and you've learned something powerful. You'd rather wait in silence than pretend in conversation. You'd rather walk alone than dilute what's true. You would rather face the loneliness of truth than the emptiness of false connection. This doesn't make you superior. It makes you tired. Tired of performing, tired of explaining, tired of shrinking yourself for people who will never understand. And that exhaustion, that deep, bone-tired exhaustion, is what finally gives you permission to walk away. Here's what I need you to understand. Walking alone isn't punishment. It's not evidence that something's wrong with you. It's not proof that you're broken or difficult or too much. It's the natural result of refusing to participate in what isn't real. In a world still dreaming, authenticity is more valuable than acceptance. And authenticity has a cost. The cost is solitude. But solitude isn't what they told you it was. It's not emptiness. It's not loneliness. It's not the absence of love. It's the presence of truth. It's the space where you finally meet yourself without distortion, without performance, without the weight of other people's expectations. And in that space, you discover something extraordinary. Look, you were always inside the room, just on the other side of the door. The version of yourself you've been searching for has been waiting in the silence all along. The world will tell you that you need more friends, more connection, more validation. But what if you don't? What if everything you've been looking for lives in the space you've been avoiding? The space between who you pretend to be and who you actually are. Most people never find that space. They stay in the noise, in the performance, in the endless cycle of seeking and never finding. But you've stepped outside. And yes, it's lonely sometimes. Yes, it's hard to watch others still sleeping. Yes, it hurts to realize that most connections were never as deep as you thought. But you're not walking away from people. You're walking toward yourself. And that journey, that sacred, solitary journey, is where everything real begins. You don't need the world to wake up for you to feel whole. You don't need agreement to feel clear. You don't need validation to know who you are. You walk alone, yes, but not as an outsider, as someone who has chosen truth over the comfort of belonging to something false. So what now? What do you do with this understanding? You keep walking, not in bitterness, not in isolation, but in quiet strength. You honor the solitude. You protect the peace you've found. You refuse to shrink yourself for the comfort of people who aren't ready to see you. And you trust something most people never learn to trust. That which fits your life will find its place. Small rooms, steady faces, honest voices. They'll come. Not because you're chasing them, but because you finally stopped running from yourself. The chosen man walks alone. Not because he's lost, not because he's broken, not because he's failed at connection, but because he's learned something the crowd hasn't. That the deepest connection starts within. That the truest peace comes from no longer needing the world's approval. That the greatest strength lives in standing alone without falling apart. You are not too much. You are not too different. You are not broken. You are awake. And the awakened ones, they always walk alone until they meet another awakened soul. And when that happens, you'll understand why the solitude was necessary, why the distance was preparation, why the silence was sacred. Because the connection that emerges between two people who no longer need each other, but choose each other anyway, that's the kind of bond the world rarely sees. That's the kind of love that doesn't break. That's the kind of friendship that doesn't fade. So walk your path in peace, in truth, in quiet dignity. The world may not understand, but you do. And that's enough. You came here looking for answers. But what you found was permission. Permission to stop pretending. Permission to honor the solitude. Permission to walk alone without believing something's wrong with you. The room you've been sitting in, you finally walked out of it. And yes, it's quieter out here. Yes, there are fewer people. Yes, the path is less certain. But you're breathing differently now, aren't you? Lighter, freer, more yourself than you've been in years. That's not loneliness, that's healing. If this felt like the first breath of a long exhale, then don't move. The next piece is the harder work. Not about being less alone, about who you become when you stop needing the world to define you. When this ends, let the next video begin. It's called Rich versus Poor Mindset. In that one, we leave the room and look at the architecture we built inside it. Stay with me. The real change starts in there.